Your government's your enemy. They've been murdering your families. They're all singing from the same hymn sheet of neo-feudal technocracy. Your government's your enemy.
You want to get rid of the monkey?
I do.
Okay, so we're doing a dual show tonight. I'm in the Oosters house, and we had the Free Speech Summit recently, and I met Jason Olbourne, and I invited him. Look, why don't you come and start syndicating your shows to Cafe Lockdown? Because we're just a community podcasters. We don't have a voice like yours, and you're fantastic. And he said, "No, go away, leave me alone." And but instead, he changed his mind. He came back, and let's just bring him in and get chatting because, he's a terrific guy.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Well, let's jump right in. How did you end up in as a part of this new wave of independent podcasters who are basically tackling the elite of the world from our bedrooms?
Well, it's a good story, and it takes a little bit of a pulling back the string a little bit, because I was in 2007, I was a pre-selection candidate for the Labor Party in the seat of Greenway in northwestern Sydney. And I learned a lot about politics from the ALP, including that it's a blood sport. And my own people tried to take me out because they figured that I had a competitive advantage because I had a wonderful website called mygreenway.com.au that was getting thousands of visitors a day. And it was being used as a resource by school teachers and all sorts of people coming in to look at great political speeches that I'd found on video and great political music, all just links to other things. And it was just very popular. And you fast forward, and that didn't work out too well. My father got sick and was terminal, and he said to me, "I want you to go to Canberra and get elected and join the Rudd government." I said, "Dad, I think after what I've seen with the blood sport, I'm going to be with you." And that was the best thing that we could have done. Fast forward to 2013, and my mother was diagnosed with terminal cancer as well. This time, Paul, you might understand what this one is: cardiac angiosarcoma.
Wow.
Yeah, 300 cases in all of history when my mum, a flight nurse for Air Ambulance, gets this particular disease. And it turned out that just by chance on my Facebook page, I discovered that there was a thing called cannabis and cancer and autophagy of the cells. And I went to Mum and I said, "Look at this. What do you reckon?" And she said, "Well, I'll try anything." So she had a professor that told her that the best chance was an experimental chemotherapy directly shot into her heart. And she found a GP that said, if you can get this cannabis stuff, you get it, and you keep taking as much as you can. And anyway, putting it all together, it was very early days before any of this stuff today. And she got hold of some. She got it made, and she would take it morning and night. She didn't get a single side effect from the chemo. She lost her hair. That was the only thing. She never got any nausea at all. She worked. She lived for 11 and a half months instead of the 3 months that they told her she would get. And she kind of, as you understand, Paul, they fall off the end of the cliff at the end when everything, the secondaries, what do you call it, the metastases got really bad, that it was now the size of an orange in a right aorta. So she virtually had to suffocate my poor, beautiful mum. And so to cut a long story short, the hemp party asked me to come and help them out as a candidate for the Senate. And I said, you guys have been absolutely brilliant to me. I'll do anything for you. And I ran for them for the Senate in 2013 and 2016. So that was my political taste, 07, 13, 16. And I'm still a lefty at this point. I'm a Bernie Sanders fan in the US.
I'm still a Bernie Sanders fan.
There you have it.
But I admire the man.
And look, I thought that was America's last best chance for a fair deal, $15 an hour, free tertiary public education and free healthcare. I thought that was a great deal. When he capitulated in June of 2016 at the convention, when he said he'd stand up to Hillary and he didn't, for mine, I went into a very deep, dark depression because I was quite afraid of what Hillary would do if she got into power. And so for 5 months, I was very quiet on social media, as a lot of my friends were. And then 9 days before that election, a friend of mine who I'd known for years, who had become an economics lecturer at a university, was also a mathematical genius. He rang me up and he said, you need to watch the Al Smith charity dinner speech that Donald Trump has just given. I said, why would I do that? He says, just watch it. So I did. And I rate that the best 15 minutes, certainly the best political speech, I think, of all time. It was that good, better than the Gettysburg Address. What he said and stood up in front of the political establishment and in front of the Catholic Church, and he said, I'm going to get you. He was the toughest, meanest character. And I thought they were just going to shoot him on the spot for what he said. And I thought, well, we still have our anti-establishment candidate, but I also don't believe he can win because of all the stuff that we've been brainwashed with over that period of time. So for the first time ever, I didn't watch the election count. I couldn't do it. I just felt sick and I was asleep, and my wife came and woke me up and she said, you're not going to believe it, but Trump won. And I'm like, what? I'm like disoriented, and I jumped out of bed. And from that moment on, my life changed. On Facebook the very next day, out of 5,000 or so friends, as we all had back then, 3,000 of them overnight, without any of us ever speaking a word of Trump for the entire campaign, were automatically all Trump fans. We just got it. We understood what was going on. This was an anti-establishment candidate. Where the connection was, we were quite concerned about the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, and Bernie Sanders was against it and Trump was against it. And within days or minutes of him taking office the first time round, he dumped it. And we go, well, he's legit. He's not a globalist. And that was how we made that connection. And we realized Make America Great Again, a nationalist. Okay, that's good. So it's anti-globalist. That's all we care about at this point. And then the traction got made. So we figured that was where it was. So I started reporting, we're just posting throughout the Trump term. But in the last year, we were all expecting that there would be these mass arrests that we now seem that might actually be coming around the corner with this Obama stuff that's going on. And so I started doing videos thinking, well, a lot of people were starting to do videos back then and they were getting a lot more coverage. So I tried it. And the first person that I lined up to was an interview, was a lady called Fiona McMurdo, who'd been banned on Facebook hundreds of times. And I'd found her on Telegram and I asked her if she wanted to be interviewed. And she said, oh, I'm banned. I can't go on. I said, well, you can come on my show. So she did. So I sat there, turned the live stream on, and within a minute or two, she lost audio. She couldn't hear a word I was saying, but she was a good talker. So I was texting her the questions. Now, I had 150 people watching live on my first show. She spoke for the entire hour, and I just threw a question in every sort of 10 minutes. And after I turned it off and looked at it, we're on 5,000 views. I thought, oh, this is easy, this video stuff. I'll keep doing it. And I did a few more interviews. They weren't quite as good. And I started reporting COVID stats from my bedroom back in the day. And I was watching those stupid reports every morning. And I remember watching Alan Jones on Sky News one night saying, it's got a 99% survival rate. And I thought, well, how does that work compared to what we're told? So I got onto the government health websites and I started collating the daily data. And so I'd sit in the morning, I'd scratch some notes together, I'd make a few graphics and screenshots, and I put them up on the screen. And 50,000 people a day were watching these shows. And I thought, wow, this is kind of interesting because we're all in lockdown. And I thought I might be onto something here. And I was quite not awkward and clumsy and all that stuff. But I got maybe within a couple of weeks, I got an email from someone that said, look, somebody who from a show called Asia Pacific Today would like to interview you about your COVID stats. And so I thought, oh, great, fantastic. So I was booked for a 6-minute interview, and they brought me on and an American stats guy who'd been doing it for 20 years. And we sat side by side and we were interviewed alternate questions. And at the end of it was 25 minutes. And the interviewer, he thanked the American fellow and he said goodbye. And then he said to me, "You're really good at this. Would you be interested in a radio show? We're starting up a radio station next year." I'm like, "Oh, I'd love to be on it. I've always wanted to do that." And so this just happened. And turned out that was Mike Ryan and it was TNT Radio. And sure enough, they rang me up and they said, "Yes, we'd like to offer you the role. It's on weekends. We can't pay you." I'm like, "Well, who gets paid in this business? So, you're giving me a show. Fantastic." They said, "What would you like to call it?" I said, straight away, I go, "Jason, Q Citizen and Friends." Just came out. And I was, that's going to be my thing. And anyway, they rang me they was opening on Tuesday. Hoodie was the first presenter live. And they rang me on the Monday and they said, "Look, we've got a bit of a problem." I said, "What is it?" And I'm thinking, oh, they're going to say, "Look, we've got someone better. We don't need you." They said, "Our lead presenter has COVID and he can't work this week. Could you cover him?" And I'm like, "Sure." So anyway, I said, "What do you need?" They said 4 hours a night, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I thought, that's 16 hours. I've never done radio before. And I said, "I tell you what, I can do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but I am committed to work somewhere else on Friday." They said, "Great, we'll take it." So I rang everyone I knew. I booked 12 guests. And I just went for it. And I had Craig Kelly. I had there was some really good guests for a first week. And I sat there and I remember at the end of the 4 hours on my first night, I was doing it from my bedroom. I stood up, walked 2 steps and flopped on my bed exhausted, but I'd done it. And that was it. That's how I started.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Now, I just have to say, people watching, we usually stream to MGG interviews. They won't let us. I don't know why. One of us is in the bad books. And Johnny Larder, we usually stream to Johnny Larder's page. It won't let us. So who knows why. Usually MGG, Facebook just gave us an award saying, "You guys are doing great work on this page." And now we're banned. So welcome to the fickle world of social media. But yeah, look, this is it. We've all been making it up as we go along. And it's really interesting learning curve because a lot of us are mature as well. You know what I mean? So, and yet, it's been fascinating learning it. I had to interview Kamal.
Wow.
I tried my best. And he couldn't figure out how to get the video to work. So I had his phone next to the microphone and I interviewed him then. And it was a great interview, except he hated Trump. And he starts attacking Trump like crazy. And I was thinking, just let it go. It's Kamal. He's in his 90s, 95. And then he got to Kamala Harris and he said, "She's beautiful and clever and caring." And I said, "Well, look, don't take this the wrong. I don't mean to be offensive, but I think she's as dumb as dog shit." And
that was it.
He lost his shit, man. Suddenly I've got a 95-year-old Sri Lankan star just hollering at me down his phone. And then he hung up. So ended my career of interviewing famous celebrities.
That's hysterical. I've only ever had one person hang up on me on an interview, and it wasn't that I said anything.
Who was it?
Scared her. Look, I can't remember. She was a contestant on one of the reality shows, and I actually met her by chance in the street. I think we were campaigning at the time, and she was all pro all of what was going on, and I booked her for an hour on TNT, but she hung up halfway through. It was just that the questions, probably she didn't want to say too much, or maybe it was a bit overwhelming, and I wanted to spend more time talking about her experience in her TV show, but it was just one of those awkward things. So anyway, that was it. I have had some very difficult interviews.
So what did you do after that? Suddenly you got dead air. What do you
You
do?
know,
What do
actually, it was a great test because, look, I worked for 12 years as a TV home shopping producer.
that's right.
So I did 5,000 live hours where I was the person talking into the earpiece of the presenter after I'd prepared the shows. And these shows go out live, and you get a screen on your
Oh,
right, a
so
computer
you
screen
weren't
that
on the
shows you.
screen. You were actually just talking into the
Yeah,
headpiece.
I was in the control room with what they called a PAL, which is a list of products, and we would time how long we would sell a product for, and I would be able to tell who was ringing in, so if it was selling, if it wasn't selling, or how things would work. So I had a lot of experience in the ad lib and filling in for people. So when that happened, I was kind of cool. I just sort of, oh well, we seem to have lost our guest, and we'll go to a break, and we'll come back. And whilst I was in the break, I contacted Mike, and he got on the other end, and we filled the rest of the show. I interviewed Mike, and he never used to like being interviewed, but that was one of those moments. So that was tricky. I've had others that give you one-word answers that are quite difficult. So when you have one-word answers in a 45-minute interview, that's a lot of questions. And so you know what it's like. Well, this is it. I don't know why people just aren't prepared, but I would have thought that if you wanted to be invited on to do something, you'd do a little bit of homework. If you were nervous, and you'd watch a lot. Like we're all very big consumers of video over the years, and TV. We watched it for years and years. So you kind of thought that, you would train yourself. I mean, that's how I learned how to do this on the other side. Was practicing with presenters. But I loved the fact that over the years I watched a lot of people. Now I'll say some names that people, I don't like that person. Well, it's not about that. It's about the technique. I thought that Bert Newton was a genius at the way that he could hold himself. Like the detail. He would walk onto the set of Good Morning Australia, and he would be doing it as he was walking, and he'd managed to take one finger and undo the button of his jacket as he sat down, and you never noticed that he did it. But anyone else would be clumsy, like trying to undo it and sit down, or you'd sit down with the button done up, and your jacket would come up like that. He just nailed it. It was experience, right? But he could ask questions. The other thing that I loved about what he did was he could blow smoke up anyone's backside and tell them how good they were. Now, I remember watching this guy. He was the photographer. He was selling portraits, and he came on. Obviously, the lead guest hadn't turned up, so they made the portrait guy from the infomercial the lead guest, and nobody knew. He just decided to interview him about photography. And then this guy gets up and does this whole story about this sell on the portraits, and I worked out what was going on there. Now, a friend of mine is a singer, does a lot of cruise ships, etc. And he was on one of those, I can't remember the name of the show, those original talent shows that they used to do. Maybe it was New Faces or something like that. And so it was like the Gong, but I think it was New Faces. Anyway, Grant goes on to this show, and he wins. He gets second place, and they gave him a watch as a prize. So anyway, years later, Grant's now on Good Morning Australia doing the Dean and Jerry act with his former partner. And after it was a big hit, very, very funny. And Bert calls them over, and they have a chat or says something to him. And he said, Grant, I recognize you. And Grant says, yeah, I was on New Faces. And without skipping a beat, he says, and you gave me a watch, and it never worked. Thinking that he might get another watch. And Bert Newton says, and after that show, I never worked again either. And it was just the punchline. just fabulous. Like that's what I mean by a pro, like just a different level. Now, look, as I say, say what you like. And we're not talking about that stuff now, but then looking at some other people, Andrew Denton, I thought was a genius the way that he used to interview, but knowing when I worked in home shopping, he had his last show that he did was in a studio next door to us, and I'd walk past the studio. No one was ever in there. When they were, they'd have multiple people, but they did a 1 hour show a week, and they had a decent sized staff, maybe 8-10 staff working there. They would do a pre-interview with the guest. So by the time Andrew walked out, all the questions were predetermined. The answers were pretty much predetermined and timed out. It was just the natural reactions that you got. And I thought, I'm doing 8 hours a weekend on TNT, and I'm getting my own guests most of the time with the help of a producer. And the workload was very different in comparison. Now, maybe you could say that theirs was a better quality, but I don't know about that, because when you're doing 8 hours a weekend on interviews, you get very good at asking questions, and so you're learning very quickly. But I think the best interviewer that I can recall that really inspired me was Richard Feidler. He used to have that show, was probably still does, on the ABC, called Conversations on radio at 11 a.m. each day. Now, Richard has this most beautiful speaking voice. He does have a face for radio, sadly, which is great that he's on radio. But he can talk about some anonymous person at the other end about the pom-poms on the back of their tennis shoes, and within 3 minutes you're hooked and you listen to the entire interview. And I thought, that's how good you have to be at this business. And that's what inspired me to go, you can do this. You've just got to ask the right questions. So that's what I got really excited about. So when that radio opportunity came up, I didn't know if I'd be presenting monologues, etc., or whether I would be interviewing. And the more I got into it, the less the monologue became and the more about the interview and the guests. So that's one of the specialties. But my other thing that sort of came up naturally was my first real serious go at doing videos on social media. I thought, what am I going to call my news show? And I want to do based on what's coming out of America, and because that's where the big changes are coming. And I thought, what's an anti-establishment name? And I thought about it, scratched my head, and I go, well, there was World Series cricket. I'm going to call it World Series News, and I'm going to shove it up them. And that's what it was called. It was World Series News. And that's how that got started. I had this great logo, and it was a whole lot of fun. And I must have done hundreds of shows doing that over the years. And then I got TNT, and it was hard to balance both of them. And I made an error. I sort of lost my World Series News audience because I was working so hard at TNT. Because when I was there, and then they said, well, now that we're going to move you to Monday to Friday, you're going to get paid. And I thought, well, I've got to take this very seriously now. This is the next step up. And so I spent maybe 50 hours a week perfecting my shows. It was a lot of groundwork, a lot of interviews, a lot of chasing. I needed to look for good guests, so I was chasing down publishers. I would look up certain books, and I made good contacts with certain publishing houses.
Jason.
Yeah.
Were you still then? Was that the 15-minute interview? So in one, say, an hour show, you had to have 4 guests. Was that the
no? Well, yes and no. Mine was more long form. So my weekend show was 1 hour, 1 guest per hour on the weekends. And when I was doing Jason Q, Citizen and Friends, I would do probably 2 interviews in an hour and an introductory. So it was a little bit different. I know that some were moving to the 4, which was a more compacted show. So it just depended what you were doing. But I was better at the long form stuff. And of course, when you got real professional, detailed international guests, you needed an hour. And so, especially with the doctors, etc. And look, I got military intelligence. I had a CIA, ex-CIA lady once, an agent, was fantastic. My favorite, lots of favorites. Dr. Shankar Achetty was something else, just unbelievable.
He's amazing intellect, isn't he? And such a great clinician too.
You get this feeling, you get this real buzz when you meet certain people, how they just make you feel alive. I felt like I was in the room with a cross between Nelson Mandela and Gandhi. That's how impressive he was. Like he just, the way he spoke and held his manner, and of course had gone through incredible adversity, and was fighting the fight. And he said, no, I want the fight. This was the difference. And he stood up for himself. And so he just stood firm. And you thought, well, you can't hurt this man. And unfortunately, of course, Shankar went on and had I believe he had a cardiac arrest. He survived it, but who would have thought that this great man that would happen to? And then, of course, another one of my beautiful friends, who I'd met in this space, was Dr. Jackie Stone, and we'd learnt one day that she had passed away, and that broke my heart. I fell to the floor in tears because Jackie and I would speak every week, and she would help me find guests out of South Africa, because I love the South African doctors because they're so resilient, they're so tough, and they're so determined. And Jackie would often say to me, she says, look, if you're really worried about the WHO, she said, you can go to a place like Zanzibar where they don't have any jurisdiction. Like, she was that dedicated. She said, come to me and bring your family and come to Zim, she'd say, and come to Victoria Falls. And you're thinking, imagine if Zimbabwe is better than Australia. Like, that's how it got. Now, they got to Jackie in a terrible way, and I thought she was the toughest woman I'd ever met and the most resilient, but it even got to her, and that was devastating. And I'll never forget, that to me is a line in the sand that I maintain that I work in her memory and in her honor. If for nothing else, that would be enough for me to serve Jackie's memory for the things that she did. And someone just put up the question. Yes, unfortunately, that is what happened. There was nothing else to that. It was just a genuine tragedy. That's what happened. Very, very sad. Now, I interviewed once, my producer said, I've got you someone for the weekend, and I didn't think much. I just didn't know who he was, and it was Dr. Gavin Ashenden, who was the former chaplain to Queen Elizabeth. And
Wow.
I know, and we booked him, and we got him up at about 7 o'clock in the morning, and he'd only sort of just woken up, and he started, and he speaks so beautifully, and I was a little bit underprepared, but it only took me a couple of minutes to work out where we were going, and I would rate that, if not my best, my top 3 interviews I've ever done. Now, just to give you an idea, right? So this is a man who was an Anglican chaplain who had to leave the Queen's service because things that he said, it was perceived that they were what the Queen believed, because he was very, at the time, he said, I'm going to tell you about Islamic immigration. I'm going to explain to you what's going on. I'm going to tell you that these people have told me that their plan is to take over Europe. And I'm not joking here. These are very powerful people that I've been friends with from all different religions, and they've told me this is what's going on. He converted after he left the Queen to Catholicism. And I thought that was a significant thing to be an Anglican chaplain to Queen Elizabeth and you become a Catholic. And when Pope Francis was alive, so this is about a year or so ago, I said, Gavin, how do you reconcile that Pope Francis is trying to introduce a term called Chrislam, the merging of Christianity and Islam? And I thought that was a substantial question. And without, I think maybe a split second, he came back and he said, all institutions have corruption within, and the Catholic Church is no different. And soon, one day, this Pope, like every other before him, will no longer be around, and then we will be able to say that the Pope is a Catholic. That's just how he said it. And I'm like, wow. So he's called him out in that beautiful 1 or 2 sentences and nailed him and said he's not fit for the job, but he didn't say it in a way like that. He just said it so beautifully.
Did he become a priest, or he just became Catholic?
Just a Catholic observer. Just that's all it was, which is significant, isn't it, at that level, like to change from Anglican to Catholicism. And a man in his, I assume in his 60s or even his 70s. Now, towards the end of the interview, I said, the House of Windsor better than any other person around that's been in there for so long, that you're so connected. What is your prediction about the longevity of the House of Windsor? And he said, straight down the barrel, I predict that the House of Windsor will collapse in William's lifetime.
Well, he's the test, isn't he? William, really. You know what
Yes.
I mean?
Yes.
And what's been happening with his wife? Wouldn't she have cancer? Is
She did, and she's back in public.
Oh.
Almost as if, done quite well. Of course, Charles is battling a different cancer. They tell you each day. It's a kind of an odd thing, isn't it, that you announce a diagnosis, but you don't provide any details. So the world lives in this weird limbo of those that look up to the royals as if, well, it's a fairy tale, it'll just go on forever, and the others that don't trust a globalist king to say, well, are we being tricked, deceived once again? Because this is my problem, is why does the king, who's the head of the Church of England, why does he do things for Ramadan and various other, and then go to attend WEF meetings? Like, what's his business doing that? He's meant to represent the Commonwealth, of which Australia is part of, and that's what I have a big problem with. I don't understand how you can just cross over there. That really upsets me. And that's part of the reason why I created the show, The 51st State, because I wanted to have the debate. I wanted to argue different ideas here. And I wanted to be able to not feel like that we're pigeonholed and certain things are off limits. Now, we've all gone down the pathway of child protection stories and been interviewed, many people, MK Ultra and horrible things, etc. And we get that knowledge. But once we've gone down those black holes, those rabbit holes, what else can we do that is more positive? How do we fight our way out? So my position is this: I'm fighting for an informational revolution that I believe that we are now closer to the end than the beginning. It's been 10 years, and very soon I believe that Obama and co are going to be found out and the world is going to wake up. I'm watching NBN News in my area just last week, and they did a story on Obama. They mentioned the word treason, and they talked about Epstein, and I'm like, OMG, it's actually happening. All that work we were all laughed at, they're all coming true now.
You don't think that the going after Obama and treason to try to deflect the attention away from Trump and Epstein Island? You don't think it's just
it's the opposite. It's actually the opposite, because I'll lay some points out. There is no way in the world that Trump campaigns and tells you that Bill Clinton's got a lot of problems, and we already knew the Epstein stuff, and we've already done the Pizzagate stuff, and we've already seen all of these different things, that he's kicked an own goal at this late stage. On the contrary, what he said, well, let me say that the number 17, the letter Q, what they said back in the day was something needs to bring people together. Now, I have digested that for many years, and I thought it could be two things. What could possibly bring everyone together? Ronald Reagan said it would take an alien attack, for example, to bring all the humans together, and that was Star Wars. That's on record. And I thought, well, maybe they're going to bring out the ET story, whether it's real or people think there's a pretend one. Or my other now, I am the ultimate political romantic. That is the name of my book. When I write one, that's what it's going to be. And I thought, what if someone resurrected from the point of view that they faked their own death? That's the last taboo, right? That's the one thing. Now, we know that we've got form on that because Olivia Newton-John's ex-boyfriend faked his own death and was found, right? And there are many people that would say that. So my fantasy was that John F. Kennedy Jr. didn't perish in that plane crash, and he was Q, and he would come back, and then when it was all said and done, he comes out of the sand with his beautiful wife and now grown-up kids, and he says, I'm Q, and there you go. And now I'm going to get revenge for JFK, my dad, for RFK, my uncle, and MLK, and all of that stuff. That was my other political fantasy. Now, I parked that for the side. Now, let me tell you this, right?
I have to admit, I am yet to have a political fantasy. So, but keep going.
So I'll say this. So I don't know who's aware of Pizzagate, but I followed Pizzagate from the very beginning. And the reason that I knew it was legit was that it came from WikiLeaks. The Podesta files was from WikiLeaks. And apparently how they were able to get into there was that his private server email, his password was password. So he just got hacked, and all those emails. That's how Pizzagate started, and that was sent over to WikiLeaks, and that's how it all got out. That's how silly it was. So, for many years, Liz Crokin, who broke that story, was the top of my list. And I finally, on TNT, my producer said, we've got Liz Crokin, and she's coming on with Mary Flynn O'Neill, the sister of General Michael Flynn, together. They've never been interviewed together. They're good friends, but they've never met. And I'm like, what an interview, right? I was so excited. So we get 2/3 of the way through. I've got one segment to go, and this is how I did it. I said, okay, ladies, now we're going to a break now. Now, if it's okay with you, after the break, I'm going to ask each of you a question without notice. Now, we talked basically, but I didn't really have any questions that they did know. They're all without notice, but I just set it up nicely. And they say, yeah, we're fine with it. So we came back, and I go, okay, let's get started. Liz, here is your question. Now I'll set it up. She did a video on JFK Jr. explaining that it could be possible that he had faked his own death. And I'd seen that years ago. So I came back and I asked her the question like this. I said, Liz, why do I think JFK Jr. is alive? That's how I framed it. And I did that because I didn't want to embarrass her by if she changed her mind that to say, why do you think? Because she would say, well, I don't. And that's the end of the question. So what she did was she went, oh, well, it's because of this, and this. And I'm like, wow, you just basically confirmed what I was thinking. That's pretty cool. Meanwhile, Mary's on the other side and she's laughing. She thinks it's hysterical. And I go, Mary, you don't get off that easy either. And she goes, oh, okay. Mary, your turn. I said, Mary, why do people think that your brother is Q? Michael Flynn. And she goes, oh, I don't know anything about Q. I wouldn't understand Q even if I could, but Liz might. And she kept walking around it so beautifully and funny that it was almost like, you got me. My brother is Q. That's what it felt like. And when you watch it back, people have said the same thing. So it was just one of those moments where you treat your guests with the ultimate respect, but you do just enough to get them to sort of open up in a different way, and they have the invitation to take it, or they can get out as quickly as they could. But that was one of my highlights, because we had worked a long way up a ladder to get to Mary, because the next one we wanted to was to get to General Michael Flynn. And after that, we were going to go to Don Jr. Like, that was our plan, to climb this, or maybe Eric Trump. And so we'd worked a few to get to that stage. And then by that stage, TNT had was being wound up, and that was the end of my show at that point. So I never got past that point. But I was pretty happy.
Can I ask Jason, sorry, what happened to TNT? Because we seem to be doing so well. And I'm not asking to more just if it happens again, what were the lessons learned from TNT? Because it was so popular.
Well, TNT, it was an expensive setup to run. And of course, Mike and Jenny were determined that everyone was paid for their work. So everyone was a professional. And so it cost a lot of money to run. Unfortunately, there was a few bad eggs that got into the ears of some of the investors and convinced the investors to pull their money, like sort of saying, well, it's not going to get to a stage where you're going to get your money back, or whatever it was. And so I think there was a little bit of cold feet going on. But the difficult part was that the censorship was quite tough, because we were getting shadow banned on YouTube, shadow banned as everyone was, but it depended. Now, I remember I did an interview, and I played a short clip, and then we got taken off, and it was presumed that YouTube took us down because we didn't have a copyright on the video, but we did have a copyright for the video. So it was unexplained as to things like that had happened. So when your chain breaks and you're doing a perpetual feed to YouTube, that was quite challenging. Now, there are many other ways that you would run that by reviewing it today. A subscription model could work quite nicely. But the thing that I learned from TNT was, first of all, that production values had to be at the absolute pinnacle for what we were doing on social media. So it was meant to run like a proper radio station that became, they wanted to run it as good as what it looked to look as Fox News, for example. That was the standard that they were working for at that level. Now, you might not like Fox News, but it was the look, not the whatever. And as you can see, like, my camera's a full HD, like a 4K camera that was supplied to me, for example. That's what I still use today. Background, lighting. We had people teaching us how to put the lighting together. So there was a crew there. So it was a full-on radio station on video. That's technically what it was. So I was incredibly proud of the work I did, but I was taught a lot. Like, Mike would say, he'd ring me up, or he'd send a message through my producer and say, he's talking too much. And I didn't quite know what he meant. But what it was is that we can, like, I'm answering for too long, but I was butting in. I wasn't really a butter inner. I was more of that I would talk too long, but what I was trying to do was summarize what they just said to me and then progress the interview. But I knew I needed to compress that. They were just technique things that I had learned. So I was learning as I went, asking sort of better questions. The other thing is, and I know this is difficult, is when you are listening to your subject, to your interviewee, you've already got an idea of other things that you want to ask them. But depending on where the answering goes, like, you're listening and you're thinking, like, you have to do 2-3 things. And so I like to scribble as I go. And the only ugly thing is when you scribble and put your head down like this, it looks like you're distracted, but actually I'm just writing a note because I don't want to forget it. And so what I've decided to do is I want to get a notepad right here where you can see what I'm writing, because it's a bit more, you know what I mean? Like, it's all the skill of engaging the audience. And here I am yakking on, and I'm not really engaging the audience. I'm just talking to you guys, just spilling my guts out, which is kind of nice to be on the other end of the microphone for once.
It's interesting. Who was that guy that did the War Room? Bannon used to do the whole show like this. Yeah, so let's answer that question. And then he'd be, like, no interest in he'd come back. I know he had his name, but I used to watch to go, wow, man, you give a shit.
It's funny, isn't it? You can be that successful and have no camera skills.
Oh, well, he did come from a high position, you know. He was up in the Trump thing, so I think that had him. But it's interesting watching podcasts around the world, what's working, what's not. And then you get like America seems to have a lot more money for independent media than Australia. I know Joel Jamel went there and he said they're throwing money at independent media. There's abundance. We're over here, we're all scrimping and saving, trying to figure out how to make it work. But a proper example is Redacted. You know, there's obviously a lot of money behind that. And yeah, it's really such an interesting field because I don't pretend to anyone that I'm an independent journalist at all. In fact, I'm getting less and less interested in the facts. I'm just more interested in the stories of the people on the ground facing the greatest change in our lifetime. I mean, we're at the end of the She'll Be Right era. I've been talking today about it, saying, well, like pilgrims coming up and going, we got a constitution? What's it? Do we have freedom in it? And like I still remember when they said, actually, the freedom's not enshrined, it's implied. And you're going, that's a huge bridge between enshrined freedoms and implied. You know, it's like, yeah, you got freedom of speech, and you know, that's not it. You know, my fingers are crossed all the time. And Australians are learning. So, and you ask a lot of Australians, I mean, you're in politics and interested, but you ask most Australians, they've never seen or read the Constitution ever, never learnt it in school. Branch stacking, I remember being in my 30s thinking, I have no idea what that is, and I don't care. And I was, because I was into the arts, this was where I grew up, but I'm not alone. But now, because we had trust that these politicians who we were always making fun of literally had the country at their heart, and suddenly here we are now going, we owe $1 trillion, we're giving our gas away for free. Broccoli costs $10 for 1 flower of broccoli, and we're all on here trying to make sense of it. And so what I see is a wave of like a rising tsunami of people becoming aware that something's wrong and not knowing what to do about it. And we're surfing that wave and sort of talking right from the front of this renaissance in Australia. I think if we can get through it, we can actually have an incredible country, but it's quite far ahead of us yet. But talking and identifying the problems is step one of fixing anything.
Speaking about, we need energy. Without energy, we don't have an economy.
Yeah.
Yep.
We should play that linguist.
Oh, should we have a comic break? Where this is probably the funniest video of the year. I know Jason's already played it on his show.
Oh, let's see it. It's brilliant.
Everyone, go get a cup of tea if you haven't seen. I don't know how to use this Mac computer. And but this is it. We'll come back.
Regarding electrification and battery electric vehicles in your mining operations, then?
Well, we have coal because we've got the biggest coal deposits in the world, but we're not allowed to burn the fucking stuff, so the world's rooted, really. It's all right to be idealistic, but you also have to be realistic. And until the lights go out, the idiots that want to be green on everything and not do mining, not do coal, not do anything, they're going to have to go back and use candles and live in tents, and then they'll No, you might fucking laugh, but it's true. You understand what I'm talking about? I'm not talking bullshit, I'm talking reality. No. If we don't get
I want to reach that
realistic, we're fucked. It's as simple as that. We're not allowed to use uranium. We've got the biggest uranium deposits in the world in Australia. We're not allowed to mine the fucking stuff. So it's all fucked. So when half these cunts die, well, the world will be a better place, and then those of us that survive will get it going again.
Well, that's an no.
My next door neighbour, I was talking to him. He's a lawyer, so he's not an idiot. Well, he is a fuckwit, but that's another problem. But he said, oh, that's right, you just put plugs along the highways. I said, but if you haven't got a fucking source from a power station, plugs on the highways aren't going to do jack shit, right? Do you understand me? The people don't understand. They think the electricity comes out of fucking space. But if you haven't got a charging system, which is a steam coal burning power station, how the fuck can you charge your batteries? Do you understand that?
Yeah, I understand.
Well, there's a lot of the cunts don't, and that's the problem with the world.
Thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest.
Do you know what's really interesting? In a woke world, this might actually be the antidote. Someone who finally gets, and we're just ripping and tearing it down and going, we can't go that way because we can't afford to. Do you know Botswana? They have one resource, diamonds. If you're in Botswana at 21, they buy you a house. If you want to be educated, they'll fly you anywhere around the world. They'll pay for it to educate you in anything you want to be educated in. They will look after their people. This tiny little African nation with one resource handles it better than we do with all our resources. I mean, it's literally got to a point where we've got to say it like it is and not pussyfoot around. It's insane that we're leaving our children $1 trillion worth of debt. Most of us can't even conceive what $1 trillion is. You know what I mean? It's just like every 10 years they've got to add. 10 years from now they go, oh, we have $1 quadrillion read, or a Google thing of debt, just to, you know, make us go, what's that? I'm still trying to get $300 together. You know, it's insane where we are. I know when I asked Rennick when he was running for the election, I said to him, I said, can I ask you the question everyone wants to know? And I asked him in a place, I said, how is there any way that our generation can pay off this $1 trillion worth of debt so we don't leave it to our children? And he said, oh, in 40 years of really hard work, where we're all working hard together, maybe we can sort of, you know, make a dent on it. And it was something like that, which was meaning no. The answer is no. We are the generation born with all this freedom, all this wealth, this incredible country, and now we're fat, we're broke, we're depressed, we're basically powerless, and we're leaving $1 trillion worth of debt to the next generation. And then we go around, why don't they respect us? They've got no respect. Why should they have any respect? And we're in such a staggeringly interesting time. And you are the face of it. You, Paul, other podcasters are basically, how would you put it? The questioners, the ones coming up and going, hello. And you should be, you're interviewing all these great people from around the world. Why aren't you allowed to interview the Prime Minister? Why aren't you allowed to interview any of the main ministers? We just sold our souls to the WHO. Why can't you interview the health minister, the guy that looks like he got hit by a bat? You know what I mean? Like, is that stupid look on his face? Why can't you?
Well, there's one word why we can't, and it's only a temporary reason, and it's called credentialism. And it's because we are not taken seriously by those people who should answer to us, because we are, as a community, we are a substantial community. But because of the way that politics is played, we have been divided to the point that we don't count in their eyes. We are not a threat. So the question is, how do we become a political threat to them, and then we'll be taken seriously? So there is a solution for that, as there is a solution for our debt. And the solution is that we need to organize. And so in old school lefty terms, that is the term union. And for us, that is not a dirty word if you understand the academics and what we're trying to say. Now, the reason that you would do such a thing is, in the first instance, is that everyone needs to be protected against any future mandates or any compulsory medicine. So if 500,000 people wanted to get in together and create a group, a collective, that would be your first reason. Now, from an independent media perspective, I maintain this. Now, I did see a lady put up a comment just a few minutes ago, where she said, if there's money, it's not independent. Well, I wholeheartedly disagree with that. And the reason that I do is that for us in the independent media, our first thing we need to do is become professional. And that means that you have to get paid. Now, to become professional, it means you have a code of conduct. It means that you get a press card, which means that you can turn up where these other people do and you can ask questions. Now, admittedly, those on the mainstream with their supposed larger audiences, we're going to be pushed to the back, but I still reckon I can get in there and ask a question at a press conference of my government ministers, etc., when they're telling us stuff. So that's very important. So once we are credentialed, press carded, and on a level playing field, they can't try these disinformation laws to say, well, the government's exempt, the mainstream media is exempt, but you guys on social media, we don't even count you. Well, now you're going to have to count us. And then you apply the same rules to third-party candidates. Now, we all know that we're sick and tired of being divided at election time, and we've got, One Nation running against trumpets, running against libertarians, running against People First and Heart and Citizens Party, and all great people. and they all represent fantastic things. And anyone who puts their hand in their pocket and decides to run as a candidate 100% gets my respect. I've done it 3 times, and the last time in 2022, my best friend during the campaign was the fellow from Jim's Tires who had to come to my house almost every second day after my tires were punctured. And I knew who it was. It was always the same people, and they would puncture them, they would slash them, and they'd either come into a puncture or a tire replacement. Did it to our second car during the campaign. Happened over and over again. We had homes that people put signs up on their fences. The signs were ripped off. The fences were damaged. We knew who it was. Couldn't do anything about it, of course. I'd put a sign up. It was gone in an hour. Some of those signs, I mean, one thing that when I ran with Clive, and the reason I ran with Clive was that I figured that we would have the resources and the advertising campaign to send a message. And I thought I'm better off running with that party than another one that doesn't have those resources. And that's why I chose to do it. Now, Clive had one great, a number of good policies, but one great one was to put a 15% excise on our iron ore that was going to China anyway. Now, that was going to pay $22 billion off in the first year straight off our debt. And they'd worked out that over 20 years with inflation, you could actually write off your $1 trillion debt at the time just on your iron ore exports. Now, recently there was a mine that got found, I think in South Australia, and its name escapes me. I've got the file somewhere. It's meant to be the biggest iron ore deposit in Australia, if not the world, and it's worth something in the order of $7 trillion. And when you divide up that number, it actually equates to $250,000 per Australian today. 250,000 per Australian, one deposit. So my question is, if you just dedicated that one deposit, paid 50% to get it out, and you could obviously employ so many people to do that because you're talking $3.5 trillion, and you gave a royalty check to every Australian family today in that household of $125,000 each. In many cases, you'd be able to pay off their mortgages if a family got together, husband and wife, and kids, whatever. Pay off the family home. We'll use that to create equity, etc. Down the track. You write off a whole bunch of debt. Or the other alternative is you get a lot of people that can get into the market. And with that, you can then create different types of housing because the whole housing market's changed. Now, UAP wanted the policy of decentralization, which was a big deal. Get out of the capital cities where it's cheaper. Move out. Build. Obviously, you want to build infrastructure like fast rail, etc. But you plant government departments all around the country, which they kind of do, but you can build hubs around that. And so that was an interesting one again because it took the heat out of the capital cities where you can't afford $1 million for a shoebox, which today, 3 years later, $1.5 million for a 2-bedroom shoebox. You can't pay that off. You can't do it. So you've got to come up with other ways. Now, I've spoken to people about nuclear power, and I spoke to Stuart Ballantyne on my show, The 51st State, who is a shipbuilder, and he showed me these wonderful videos where the nuclear power is like a gas and go bottle exchange, and you put this little 2 nuclear tubes into the bottom of a ship, and it runs for 12 years without changing it. And all you do is you take it out after 12 years and put 2 new ones in, and you cannot blow it up. It's impenetrable. And it's 100% safe. And then you just go bury this bottle somewhere in a designated area, and that's the end of it. Now, that solves all our energy problems. Now, thank you, Karen. I also met a gentleman the other day at the Free Speech Summit, and I do know his name. I won't say it out now because he's still working on it, but he's talking about using nuclear power for the common man. The idea that you could have drones that could do deliveries, etc. I don't know how you would pilot such a thing. You'd have to have air traffic, etc. But he's talking about the same thing. Now, for some reason in this country, we're afraid we're like nuclear. We're like nuclear isolationists. Everyone's using nuclear. We have this beautiful, abundant thing. We have the middle of the country that we could bury our nuclear for 1 million years and it wouldn't matter before it would degrade. Like no one goes there. It is the outback for a reason. And you could build all these great things and you could do it. And I'm not saying I would want to do it, but you could, argument's sake, you could say, what if we became someone's got to be the nuclear waste tip, but you could charge, like Donald Trump would charge, billions of dollars to be able to successfully do this if you wanted to. Now, I'm not saying that you would do it. I'm just planting the seed there.
Jason, have you heard of thorium reactors? Because there's a way of actually you can use the contamination to make more energy using thorium, and it actually eats up we're the Saudi Arabia of uranium. So, yes, and we're the 3rd biggest fossil fuel producer in the world, and we've got some of the highest energy prices. So just like you were saying, obviously the country is full of resources. but it's not being shared back with the people. It's all going somewhere, but it's not going into our bank accounts, is it?
Can I just back up to the UAP, Jason? Sorry, I don't want to stop
Yeah,
you
go on.
saying that. But I was always fascinated. I was traveling the country then, and the yellow freedom was everywhere. We still see some of them sort of decaying now. And I know after the loss, the great, where hardly anyone got in except for Babette, Troper was even saying that the word freedom had been compromised by the UAP, which I actually disagree with. But what if you'd been in charge? And I'm not putting Clive down. I think I actually really love the guy. I think he's quite incredible. When I saw him on Tucker Carlson, I was so impressed by him. But what do you think you would advise him to do differently? That something that would get Australians to actually let go of this Liberal Labor government and just try something else?
Look, it's a very good question, and it's complicated, but it could also be simple. Now, if we look at it from a simple perspective, we know how much money Clive spent on advertising, and it was like $100 million. If you have 150 lower house candidates and you give each of them $50,000, that's $75 million. So had Clive reduced his ad spend by 75%, but given each of his local candidates $50,000, we could have done a lot in our electorates to have been able to make a difference. We weren't given, for example, photographic of our name on a call flute. We were given a generic one. Now, I know Craig argued with Clive and said, no, you need to give our candidates pictures. And Clive said, no, we're just going generic. So we had to put our own hand in our pocket. Now, we were only given call flutes and hats and shirts and stuff like that, but we weren't given any campaign money, so we had to raise that on our own. Now, I had a real problem with that because in 2022, most people weren't working yet who were supporting us, and I couldn't work for a billionaire and ask my supporters for money, so I didn't. So I put my hand in my pocket and I used a fair bit of my own money. It was quite expensive, and I ran it. Now, I ran the best possible campaign that I could, but we were excluded like we were back then. So we didn't have, we had social media. Now I would come home, I'd put $50 a day on my Facebook ads to try and push some ads out there. I'd come home and the balance was still $47.50. They would only take $2.50 a day off me. Now I knew that they weren't trying. They were shadow banning me, even on paid ads. That's how bad that got. So it was really hard. So that's one thing that would have made a difference. Now the other thing is, Clive didn't want to do it. Craig did want to do it, and we want to do it. We wanted to have a branch structure, which meant that you would create branches in your area so that my seat of Patterson, we would have a branch at Port Stephens, we'd have a branch at Maitland, we'd have a branch at, say, Medowie, and we'd have three, and we'd bring our members together, and each branch would have a branch president, and within that you write policy and you answer questions and you raise money and you do all those things, and you get out there and you work your local communities and they become aware of you. That is imperative. Now, I know Jared wants to do that with People First, and I know One Nation has finally decided to do that. And so this is a big part of this process. So I think, though, that where we are today with the different political parties, if we consider all of the podcasters we watch, and there's some very, very good people out there doing some great work, very clever people, and they work very hard. And then you look at our political power base today, we've got 4 One Nation senators. So Pauline Hanson has been in the game for 30 years, and she is our leading politician outside of the two main parties on our side. However, I can't get Pauline on my show. I've had Malcolm on my show once. Pauline's not interested in talking to me, so I feel like. Sorry?
Has she said why? Is she giving any reasons?
There's just no interest. You just can't get a call back. But having said that, I was at the Tucker Carlson event in Canberra, and I was the lucky guy that got to ask him a question. There's only 4 journalists on the entire thing, and I got a 7-minute positive answer. I had Barnaby Joyce come up to me. I had Matt Canavan congratulate me. I had Alex Antic congratulate. Great question, Jason. They all gave me their cards. They all said, reach out anytime. We'll look at your, we'll see you. We'll come and do an interview. I can't get Matt Canavan on my show. I can't get Alex Antic, never replies. Jared Rennick always does. Malcolm, I can get through to his team. Russell
I
Broadbent.
interviewed Alex in Adelaide on a park bench because I was at somewhere where he was speaking, so I think I sort of got him there.
Yeah.
But that was it. and it was okay, but it was interesting, you know. But yeah, I understand what you're saying.
I've got a question for you, Jason. You mentioned it before about credentialing. You know, that what does it take to get credentialed? I would have thought that even if a benefactor came with $50 or $100 million, they still might kick you out. So I'm naive to this. How do you get credentialed?
So what I would do in the first instance is I would set up what would be an independent media union in a very basic level, and we would encourage all independent media, anyone who's a podcaster, effectively to come along. Now, some people won't want to go along. Now, see, here's one of the things, right? Is that we're all called cookers and conspiracy theorists, all these derogatory terms. However, when you are able to point to source material, even primary or raw sources, that no longer becomes a conspiracy theory. And when you are gaslit that it's not real, that's on them, not you. So there are going to be competitions. But there are people that will happily go out on a podcast and just talk rubbish, or at least off the cuff idea. That probably isn't at the level that you need to be. Now, that's no disrespect to people who've got big audiences, but in all honesty, they can be great ideas and they can be entertainment, but that is not the middle ground playing down the center of what we're trying to do. So we must get better at what we do. So when we then create a code of conduct that we stick to, and that's not too difficult to do. TNT, for example, have one that we followed. You're already always 3/4 of the way there. And the next level is to use that as a group to then go to an international media union and then join them. And then it's like when you get registered as a doctor and then you get your press card and then you are now qualified. So once you agree to stick to a set of rules and you have the necessary qualification as a paid up member, money talks and you have to pay out money, which means you have to earn money. And when you become a professional, well, there you are. You've ticked all the boxes. You're a professional, carded, unionized. That's as good as anyone else in the business. What else do they want us to do? And that's the point. But when you make an error, when you go out there and you make a faux pas, well, there's probably going to be some form of discipline reaction, which may well be that you just call out on it, or you may be punished, or you may, whatever it is, you may have to make a formal apology, or you may do some training, for goodness sake, but not training like you're going to learn about, vaccines or something, but training about the things that you're trying to do. They're just little things in raising standards and recognizing what we're trying to do, because we can talk in our silos forever. And we can keep our community informed, but we can also keep them buoyant and lifted. And I know that Michael, out of anyone that I've watched, is probably the leader in that game that is focusing fully on positive. My position is I want to provide not only solutions, but I want to say when this thing crashes, which we're all playing for one way or another, who is going to lead at that point, or who are we going to look to who is going to lead at that point, and what do we actually want? For example, if we woke up tomorrow and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama are in handcuffs, the Epstein list is out, and then there's 100 people in handcuffs, and all these different things are happening, and they announce that the US government is collapsing and all this stuff. Now, then we work out that here in Australia, a couple of names get dropped, and that links to this and that and the other, and all of a sudden, what do we do then? Like, who do we look to? Do we go back? Like, this was the thing, right? I don't know. I'll go pretty radical here. Back in 2017, they said when this all collapses, the last trick that the deep state will have is the fake alien attack. And I'm sure plenty of people can recall that or think about it.
That's what we thought the drones were.
Exactly. So there's this kind of these hints along the way. So my point there is, what do they expect by running a fake alien attack? Are we all going to go, bring back Barack because we need someone to talk to the aliens? Well, hang on a sec. You mocked us for 75 years. You pretended they weren't real, and now you're going to fake one and say that we need you guys because the aliens are coming. It's ridiculous. I went and did an exopolitics course with Dr. Michael Sala, a former PhD professor from ANU, on exopolitics. I'm more qualified than those guys on off-planet politics, if you want to know.
I've watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I think I've got it.
There you go. So, this is the point. Like, there's not a stone unturned over the last 10 years that I haven't asked the question on everything. Like, who is really pulling the strings? Now, people get
a question. That really is. I think that is a fascinating question.
Because people want to say to you, Israel's controlling Trump. Well, how did he fix Iran in 5 minutes when they're talking about it for 30 years with that, whatever that attack was? Like, it's the opposite. So the most powerful politician in the world is always the US president. And this one, they've tried to kill him, they've tried to maim him, they've tried to bankrupt him, they've tried to lock him up. They've done everything. And every single day, they names. Now, we can't control what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. We can't control what's happening in Israel and Gaza. And we can't control what's happening with the immigration crisis that's happening in Europe, that Trump finally called them out today. And even here in Australia, we can't even, as you said, we can't get Albanese onto these shows that thousands of people are watching. We can't even get Mark Butler on the show. We can't get any of these people to even respond. I can't even get my local MP to come onto the show. Like, they just, no, sorry, not doing it. But having said that, I won't go on to some of these other people who want to do a hit piece on me. But this is, again, the problem. They keep thinking that we're going to attack each other, and this is not what it's about. Now, I said at the at the Free Speech Summit, when John Larter came up, I said, everyone in this room is here for a very particular reason. Would you please raise your hand if you have been affected or someone you know has been affected by the COVID jab? And every single person in the room put their hand up, every single one. And I said,
Yeah, that was right.
we all have PTSD.
Yeah, and if you remember, I added, does anyone raise your hand if you know anyone who's been killed or died from COVID? One person raised their hand.
Exactly.
So one COVID, the rest of the room raised their hand. And we've done this around Australia about 4 or 5 times, always the same. 1 or 2 for COVID, the rest of the room stands up.
Yes, exactly. So my point is, my point with this is that if we all have PTSD, and it is a direct result that the people in power performed a breach of trust on us, that's the reason why we don't trust them anymore. And it's very simple. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. You're not going to get away with it again. Now, every single person in that room is not a victim. We're not going to the government and saying, compensate us, put us in a hospital, give us free mental health care, etc. Your system is broken. We know that you broke it. We want to fix it, and we want first of all, we want to hold you to account. We want you to admit your mistakes, and we want to be able to work out how we go from here. So those people in that room, none of them were victims. What they were was what we try and call a survivor. I go a step further. I believe that once you get back to zero, you have to then go and thrive. I call not victim, but thrivers. That's why we're so different. Now, 50% of Australians now depend on the government for something. Like, that's the latest statistic that we saw last week. Now, here, we're the opposite. We're saying it's not that we want to be self-sufficient and grow our own vegetables in our backyard. Some people can't do that. We just want to be self-sufficient in that we don't depend on government for handouts. We can go and raise our own incomes. We can feed our own kids, and we can hopefully service our own mortgages, or hopefully one day pay them off if we can get that lucky to be able to do that, and then leave the world a better place than in which we found it. That's always been the way that it was. But we've now got to a stage that the Ponzi scheme of property has forced things so expensive that our children have become financial nihilists. They no longer believe that they will ever be able to afford a property. Klaus Schwab swans in and says, you'll own nothing and be happy. And then they go, okay, well, I'll go and rack up a big credit card debt and go travel, and I won't worry about it. But you're going to have to do it one day, because you can't go bankrupt and come back into the system and then say, well, what do I do now? So
that's the interesting thing right there. Sorry to interrupt, but with young people, I hear so many people from our generation putting the young down and saying, "Oh, they don't work hard." But I'm thinking, yeah, but you've taken away all the carrots. They know when we started work, we're thinking, oh well, we probably could afford a house, or you could afford a car or a nice holiday. These kids think, screw it, it's all gone. You know what I mean? And so, where's their motivation to try? And they get copped for anything. There's another risk. We're just going to show you this meme here. I don't know if you want to this. Sure. This meme is actually quite terrifying, because this is where we are, and this is happening in England, but it'll be happening here soon. I don't know if you think it's got the SWAT team at the door, and he's going, "Honey, did you post something negative about the regime?" But this is you, Jason, have been living for the first 3 years of COVID. This was a high possibility that at any time there could be not a knock on your door, but basically your door gets smashed in and you get carted off. This is nothing we don't talk about, but for 3 years, every one of us was living under that possibility. And it was a real possibility because they were building camps. What do you think now that we've signed up to the WHO, and the WHO has this mandatory vaccine, if they ability to mandatorily vaccinate us if they believe there's a pandemic warrants it, the new pandemic? What are your feelings of what Australians will do, or thoughts of what Australians will do if suddenly they're talking about a new pandemic and they're saying we're going to actually go out and we're going to go to your street, we're going to force vaccinate you? What do you think the modern Australian is going to do in that circumstance?
It is the ultimate black pill question. That's the number one question that all of us have been afraid of. I used to say to my wife that in the peak of COVID, when there were moments that Brad Hazard looked like a psychopath and was, carrying on like a crazy man, that I said that it's possible that someone's going to knock at my door and do that. And I said that this is my line in the sand. I'm going to sit on the floor like Gandhi, and I will say, do not inject me. Just take that sword and chop my head off, because I refuse to play in a society that thinks that I have no longer sovereignty over my own body in my own home. That's it. I'm out. I will never contribute to this society again. I'm not doing it again. But you put it on record and you film it and you show the world what you did in order to keep the world safe, you dirty bastards. Because I'll tell you this, an anti-vaxxer in the 80s was somebody that we pitied because we thought that it was like riding a motorbike without a helmet, that they were putting themselves at risk. And in 2020, when it turned around, all of a sudden, if you didn't take a vaccine, it made my medicine not work. Now, that is flawed logic, and any politician that uses that as logic to say that that's the case should be disqualified immediately, because they don't know what they're talking about. They are nothing more than a rubber stamp for a corrupt regime, and it's quite simple. But my happy ending to this is this. I am 100% confident. My political loyalties changed on a dime. I was no longer a lefty or a righty. And I said to Barnaby Joyce when I met him, I said, Barnaby, you know it's not left and right anymore, right? He looked at me. I said, it's globalism versus nationalism. I said, and you're the National Party. I said, do you not see, what are you partnering with the Liberals for? What I want them to do, I want the Nationals to create a coalition with a consolidated third party. That's how I believe we win government. We can't do it on our own. Right? Pauline has done what she's done. She's now in her 70s. She can only go for as long as she can go. But Pauline has had 30 years. Now, she's done great, but the future is not Pauline. But could you imagine, just for the fun of it, could you imagine a national party, right, that was led by Matt Canavan, could be technically the Prime Minister. Jacinta Price could technically be the Foreign Minister or even the Prime Minister. And Jared Rennick leads the third party movement and he's the Treasurer. You tell me that we can't get this country back on the road in 2 years if we have the leadership.
Rennick as the treasurer, I think the country would breathe a sigh of relief.
Yes.
What I love about this, I was talking to him the other day, and we're talking about freedom. He goes, he doesn't want to talk about freedom. He wants to talk about responsibility.
Yes.
That comes with freedom. I totally agree.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
The freedom word is dead. It's a dirty word.
People that can change this around, they're there, and instead we're trapped by the Albaneses of the world and this system and this inability for Australians to be inspired enough to break out of it. You know what I mean? That's the interesting question, because what you were saying before, where they tried once and then don't get a second go. I've been saying for ages that COVID initially was a Pearl Harbor attack on Australia. No enemy gets two Pearl Harbors. So whatever they do next, it's like Alien, the Alien franchise. First was one alien, they bring the film back, they've got lots of aliens. They've got to up the ante. So whatever the WHO is going to do, it's going to be big because nothing else will work. And I think at the moment there's like an unspoken civil war. It's happened since The Voice. 60% said no. But that's it. It's sort of simmering there, and it's the government's time to make a move, a significant move. And since then, they haven't really done it. They did a bit with the hate speech, and we killed that. Now they've got the digital ID that they're trying to bring in, but another COVID as yet hasn't happened.
Do you know what Jason said earlier about, like I was saying that too, in Brisbane, in Queensland, half of the population are employed by the government.
Yes,
you know.
true.
And you were saying so many people are dependent on the government. But I follow a CFA who called Daniel Ammerman in the US. And he's brilliant. He wrote books on mortgage-backed securities before anyone had heard of mortgage-backed securities. And he did an analysis, and the combination of inflation and the way the government taxes you on the inflation, as if you've gained something, you know, they go, oh, it's gone up. Even if it's just kept up with inflation, then they come and take their cut. His analysis showed me a few months ago that the government ends up owning nearly everything. We're on a path. We don't even have to do anything. We just have to stay on the current trajectory, and the government will end up employing everyone and owning everything. You know, so we have to do reform. We have to really look seriously at how Australians are taxed, how they're. We've got to look at why the incomes have been flat, whereas the debt has been going. Maybe it's been going straight up. And that's largely because the banks, which is where 96% of the Australian dollars comes from, when they make a loan, it's a debt-based system or credit-based system. And the thing that how did these Australian banks get to be like as profitable as Goldman Sachs and these other mega banks? They did it on the back of Australians by lending them on the basis of property, not lending to small business, not lending to in a way that actually created prosperity and businesses and incomes for people that they could pay off their debt. No, they put it all into real estate, where it's like all on black. So those are two suggestions that I don't think we will be able to fix this until we're careening towards a sort of communist state. And we're already more than halfway there. And unless we change how we organise Australian society, we've got to decide. Even if we could afford it, I would argue we will not be able to afford the government to run everything, because then there'll be no one doing anything productive.
Yeah.
You know, it'll become like the CCP with koalas, and we're halfway there.
It's a catastrophe, exactly as you've described, and what you've described is exactly what the plan is. Now, it was always to lead to a one world government. George H.W. Bush told us the WEF is there for that reason. The UN wants more power. The WHO wants more power, all these private organizations. Now, if you had a one world government, you can't have elections. They don't exist. You can't have an election in Botswana and Antarctica and Australia on the same day to select a world president. That's not how it works. The only way it works is with an AI run by a group. Like it's almost like you're watching Superman, the beginning of Superman, where the planet explodes. Like, that's how crazy it would be. Now, the whole plan relied on the collapse of the United States to do that. That's why Donald Trump is the enemy to them. That's why. And he's saving the United States, and he's literally turning it into Fortress America, kicking all the illegals out, creating the tariffs to build as much wealth as possible, and letting the world know that if you want to trade, you can do whatever you want outside of us, but we're the biggest economy. We have the most power. We've got the best military, all of the above, and everyone wants to come to America, so we're America. But what you've described, Paul, right now is beautifully exactly what's happened. What they want to do to America, which they were doing under Joe Biden, certainly under Obama, is exactly what Albanese is opening the door to let in here. We are collapsing Australia. So what is our role now over the next couple of years? Our heyday is whatever happens in the next 3.5 years is the best it's ever going to get, unless something resurrects or Tulsi Gabbard and someone else becomes president after she takes everyone out. Like, I don't know what happens, but 3.5 years is our best chance, the next 3.5 years. What do? We have to educate, we have to organise, and we have to have big discussions. Now, I want to know, I said to Craig Kelly on an interview once, I said, why do we allow the globalists to run the Republican movement here in Australia? Do we take that seriously? And the reason I bring that up is the King's a globalist. So he's not working for us. He wants us to become a one world government and the voice. And we all talked about the UN stuff, and we all know about that stuff. So I said, why is the conservative movement so afraid of talking about a republic? Why do they want a monarchy? But the monarchy is globalist, and we're anti-globalist. And he said, we just haven't come up with a better option. And I'm like, well, that's no excuse. Let's talk about this, for goodness sake.
Wow.
Like, let's talk about it. So that's why I set up the 51st state, because I just made a proposal. If we're part of AUKUS and we have a globalist king and China's our biggest trading partner, and we're meant to pay all this money to park nuclear subs off the coast of China and spy on them, how can we be a servant for three masters? So if we were to become the 51st state, for argument's sake, we keep our proper constitution, we rip off the Australia Act, we stand under a Bill of Rights, we get the right to free speech, the right to bear arms, we open up the visas and we don't pay tariffs. That's not a bad system to be amongst whilst we're working out where we really want to go. But we're saying that that system is got to be better than the one we're in now, where King Charles doesn't give a stuff about us. Albanese's turning into a communist country. They've just let the WHO in. We haven't got anything left. So we're already there, and we pretend, oh, but we're Australian. We're not anything anymore, because we voted for the voice, and now these state governments are going to do it anyway. Well, they tell us that they're going to do it anyway. So that's my argument. So I maintain, what if we were able to say, well, we're going to take the Republican movement over from here, and we're going to start a new conversation. And the first thing that everyone wants is a head of state that they can vote for, that they believe in, that's got power over the Prime Minister. So with that, make it simple. I know who I want to be the first president of Australia, and I'm happy to tell you. But if you think about it for a moment, just let the audience think about it for a second. I'm going to tell you who I think would be the perfect first president, because it solves all problems.
I keep telling you no, I don't want to do
it. Well, you don't have to.
I can't park my bus anywhere near the Parliament House.
Do you know who I want to be the first president of Australia?
No, go ahead.
Julian Assange.
Wow. Wow, that would be a statement and a half. Wow.
You got no more truth problems, have you?
You ever spoken to him? I've spoken to his father, so I'm very good mates with his dad, but I've never spoken to him.
We would like to be able to, but I know that there's probably something to do with his the guilty plea
or something, because he hasn't.
I'd say so.
Has he? Does that one?
So one of the things I would like in the next 3 years and 6 months of Trump is that Assange is pardoned, or whatever they do, whatever it is that they do to get rid of that, to open the doors to allow him to speak. Now, Julian's only my age, like early 50s. He looks a lot older. Obviously, he's been aged quite terribly over that horrible period. But the fact that he got to have time with his wife and his two young boys, that for me, he's done enough for forever. But I tell you what, if Julian Assange was offered the role to contest to be president of Australia, I reckon we might get him out of retirement, and I reckon that would be something else.
He'd stand, if it was an election thing, he'd stand a great chance of being elected in, I think, just out of sympathy. Can I just go another way, though? Because one thing is that we're very reliant on social media. And there's Dr. Bruce Pay. I don't know if you've interviewed him, but he's got a great strategy, which he says the Viet Cong used against the Americans, and the Afghans used against the Russians and the Americans. And he says that low tech beats high tech. You tackle high tech with low tech. And at the moment, we're being censored using high tech algorithms we don't understand. Very, very clever. And low tech is that every single town in Australia and suburb has all these little forgotten about town halls that they do, they have scout meetings in them, and they're really cheap to hire. And I could see you on stage, or even us just doing a discussion, not like speech after speech, but just a discussion like this, getting Australians talking. I reckon it like the Alby Mangles thing we're talking about. We're talking about taking documentaries around, but actually bringing people together. And there was a theatre owner in a country town, Sale, I think it was, and he told me those town halls used to be the hub of the community. Everyone would come together for the church, then they go to town hall, they'd all have cups and teas. Now they sit there dormant. So these things would bring people in. People would come in just to socialize, and then here we're having a discussion about, because I think one of the great discussion pieces we have to have, which is that COVID stole our identity. We thought we were, like I said, Gallipoli and Paul Hogan all mixed together. It's gone. We don't know who we are now, which makes it very hard for people to stand up and fight and defend when they don't actually know what they're defending. And so we have to basically agree on a new identity. Not everyone's going to agree, but there are things that you're saying that I would agree with. And these are the conversations we're going to have. And imagine going town to town, and not all even together. Like you're still doing your radio shows, but even once or twice a week, you're going to a town hall. It makes money. And for the person who said making money, what do you think independent journalists eat? Air? What do they pay their rent with? Integrity? I'm sorry, but we're human beings and we live in this system too, and we need money to survive. And I know from Jason, if he's doing the amount of shows he's doing, that consumes his whole day. You know what I mean? This is hugely time consuming. I know from a lot of podcasters do. So making money is not evil. You're allowed to survive from your art. But back to that, I think this could be a way of making money for us, a way of spreading literature. We're taking books around that are banned books because the government doesn't like them. There's a lot of people writing these books now. So we're taking literature around. We're basically recreating culture. And we're starting the mission to say, who are we? We're searching for the new Australia. Humans don't go backwards. They only go forwards. We can take something from our past, but we've got AI breathing down our neck, trying to make us redundant. And we've got politicians we can't trust. The country is ripe for a new story on which they can build a new country. And it's people like you that could tell that story or help Australians tell that story.
I really appreciate that, Michael. And you probably remember when I introduced you, I said you've done more Ks than Slim Dusty. And I tell you what, if it was to go on the road to do a town hall tour, and there was, people that we could meet at town halls and do it, I would do my show from the road, provided I can get
great
to do a Starlink from the roof. You got to have internet, and you're dead right with what you said about being paid to do this, because TNT paid me. No one paid TNT. That was investor money. No one cared, and I did it. But right now, I work 3 nights a week, sometimes 4 nights a week, and I do shows in clubs, hosting events to earn money. So the question is, if I could replace that income, I'd be spending more time doing a better product. And not only that, I'd be able to employ producers. I'd be able to employ probably an apprentice person. I want to bring on a new co-host, and I'm looking for somebody who would like to do that. But at the same time, I can't expect them to work for free. And I've got to be able to develop that. Now, I have got the best young person ready to go that I want to bring on an interview, who's just like very, very young adult, who would be amazing. Now, I have met so many wonderful people on the tour. You've met more people than anyone, but even at the Free Speech Summit, the people in the audience there, some of the speakers, some of them I was aware of, but not fully aware of. Wow, what a story. And so to continue to tell this, but you're dead right. Now, it has to be solutions based. It has to be solutions. That's what Rennick was all about. So organize.
We're not telling you what Australia is. We want you to find the power within yourself to join the conversation. Put forth your here. Put forth your ideas, what you want from a culture, what you want it to be, and let's create it together. Something we can be proud of.
Any advancing civilization is directly proportional to the energy that it can create and produce. So we have to have an energy solution. And the fact that we don't tells us that whoever's in power at the moment is the wrong decision. And eventually the pendulum will swing and they will go away and they won't be there anymore. But Susan Lee is not the answer. The Liberal Party is not the answer. The Nationals have got the best possibility of an infrastructure. They're small enough and they're big enough at the same time. And if I had to do anything, I would want to be talking to those guys. And I know that there's bad blood between these establishment parties and those that have left. Craig Kelly, Gerard Rennick, they would never go back there. But I would hope that they would. But then you can create a new coalition. This is where it becomes more exciting. But again, it's not about the politics. It's beyond that, because that's not the answer at the moment. You're dead right. What is our identity? What is an Australian in 2025? What's an Australian in 2030? We don't know what our country will look like. If we're bringing in 1 million people a year, in 2030, we could be at 30 million, But if this jabberdoodle goes the way that it may, we might be at 20 million. Like, we don't know. And so that's something else that we haven't thought about.
I've been asking young people, I've done it quite a few times now, and I say, describe Australia. What do you think of the culture of Australia in your opinion? And the most profound one was a beautiful young woman in Castlemaine who said, we don't have a culture. I wish we did. We're just a load of people on a land doing shit. He said, we don't have any culture. And I thought, so this is an opportunity. And the politicians can't do it. It's like if you get a corporation that's so big, it can't change quickly. They've got to bring a CEO from outside, like they did with Telstra and Qantas. But this is for us now. I think it's our time not to be slaves to a decaying system, but to rise up and be the architects of the future. All Australians coming together.
I've for a few years, I've had this sense that we will need some sort of constitutional convention. And that needs grassroots participation, so that all those town halls, people coming together to, like you say, what is Australia? What are the rules? Because clearly the rule book has sort of been thrown out, and we have to remind them of some basic human rights. A couple of days ago, I was at Barbara O'Neill's and Miley's event, and I've got a little. I did a tweet about it, and I posted her speech, and I think Miley was. And Barbara, they were, and Michael O'Neill and John Ruddock, who all spoke, were all marvelous. But I think Miley is over the target here when she's pointing out that the Health Commission and the Council didn't fulfil their duties under the statute. So she's calling them out, and good on her. And Barbara O'Neill also, so well respected globally, but when it comes to speaking in Australia, it's threats, and so we have to sit down, I think, in the town halls and go, what are the things that we really value, and how do we make sure that is the Australia that we get going forward?
Now, Barbara O'Neill is banned from lecturing in Australia. She sells the books on an equivalent with J.K. Rowling, because I was hanging out with Michael O'Neill when he was running for Parliament and hearing these stories. It's incredible. And they banned her from Australia because she once suggested to a mother who wanted, she said, if I can't produce milk from breastfeeding, is there a solution? And Barbara O'Neill said, well, you could try goat's milk. And they banned her, saying that could kill the child, even though like a third of the world's population give their babies goat's milk. It's insane. And what it was protecting the products of Big Pharma.
It probably didn't have enough arsenic in it.
Yeah, but Barbara threatens Big Pharma's products, so they've got her gone. And no one does anything. The silence is what's destroying us. And that's why even the town halls, you could go there for an agenda, but just the first goal of getting Australians to talk. You have a right to talk. This is your country. This is your time. You have a right to add your voice to the conversation of who we are, and going from there. Even if you got some crazy ideas, it's still in there, because the best ideas will rise to the surface. Yes. They will be the ones that people go, yeah, I want that. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, even crazy things like bringing back free education for our children. So they're not like Joe Rogan was talking about becoming an American, a doctor in America at the moment. It's $500,000. That's I think that's what he was saying. $500,000. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
No, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. We live in this society that we're meant to be all DEI, right? And the egalitarian in Australia. unless, of course, you buck the system and all of a sudden no one cares. So the anti-vaxxer was literally just discarded from society at that point. What is it that's going to bring us together? Now, I'm reading the comments as they're coming through, so my eyes are dropping down, and I feel that there's an enormous amount of frustration. There's sadness. There's certainly an undercurrent of anger, and everyone has got different ideas. So that's pretty much summarizing what you've just said. But if it comes down to it, the one thing that this community, whatever we are, we always need to give it before we receive it, is respect. And if we can receive respect and be understood for who we are, and we can quantify that there is however many there are of us, if there's 500,000 or 1 million, I feel like somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million is probably the real active groups, and that's probably what made it to Canberra, and then some more. And some have died off, and some have gone back into normal society and whatever. Let's call it 750,000 of us. That is a substantial amount of people. And if we really got desperate and it still went bad and we were all together, we could secede if we wanted to. The northern half of New South Wales is one electorate. No one lives there. 100,000 people live in the top half of New South Wales apart from the coast. We could all move there and we'd build up a fence and say, leave us alone. We'll just put our own nuclear power. We'll pump some water into the ocean.
They had in WA. They had a principality there for a while.
If that was... But if that's your worst case scenario, just leave us the hell alone and we'll do that. We'll go and join the province of Mount Hutt, if you will, and we'll build around him, like over in WA. If we had to do that, now I don't think we do, but if the town hall tour was the respect tour, and that's the point. I had the
great name.
Thank you. I had the chance. I interviewed Fred Paul, independent journalist who used to be on ADH TV. And we talked about the election, and we talked about non-compulsory voting, because that's my thing is, now this is my argument. I believe that we shouldn't have compulsory voting in Australia unless all political candidates have a level playing field to present their arguments. But you can't exclude third parties and mock them and say they're not credentialed, and then have compulsory voting, because that's deliberately misleading. That borders on fraudulent, because it's not a true representation of what's going out there. And for the AEC to say, oh, those people don't count, well, that's election interference one way or another. So we're either all in and we all get a platform on the ABC and all of these government funded things, because we're taxpayers too, or we go non-compulsory voting, and then the people that don't care, don't have to care. And then we go that way. And it turned out that I posted it on X, and Darren Hinch wrote a comment underneath it. And I'm like, wow, is that really Darren Hinch? I looked at it, 89,000 followers. That's Darren Hinch. So underneath I wrote, and I said, would you be interested in an email? And I didn't hear back for 8 days, and a notification popped up, and I read it, and he put his email address. And I sent an email with my phone number at the bottom, and an hour later my phone rang. Hello, it's Darren Hinch here. I'm like, holy shit, Darren Hinch has rung me to be on an interview. Now, we arranged an interview on the spot, and look, he's watching my show with this background and this microphone, and after he agreed to the interview, he said, so where would you like me to go? Which studio? Can you believe that? That's how impressed he was. And I said, Darren, you do it from your study or your living room, and he did it from his lounge room and his unit. And I tell you what, people were saying, I was so excited, because that's a big deal, right? 60-year journalist.
That's huge. That's huge. Getting there is huge.
3 years as senator, and 3
not
times.
As big as Kamal, but it's getting
not
there.
as big as Kamal, but close. But and twice got locked up for naming bad people for contempt of court, right?
No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
He told me about times behind bars when he was quite scared for his life. He told me about how much he loved being a senator. He told me about the things that he tried to achieve, and he told me about all sorts of stuff. He also told me that he took 7 jabs. And so I said, Darren, I understand you took 7. I have watched your interviews during the COVID period about what you thought. But I said, with all due respect, I want to tell you something about me. And I told him about my mother being a nurse and getting this particular cancer, and realizing that the 4 triggers for cardiac angiosarcoma, one of them was a live flu vaccine, high copper, low zinc, and root canal, all normal things. But the live flu vaccine combination is a trigger. I looked it up. I got the studies. And then I said, that is why I was a little bit skeptical of vaccines at that point, because they cost my mother her life. And then I explained to him a whole bunch of other statistics, including how the government change now don't recommend it for healthy kids. And I went through all these facts for 15 minutes. And at the end of it, he looked at me and he said, I don't still regret taking my 7 jabs, but your point is taken. And I thought, wow, I have convinced
man.
one
That
of the
is
biggest.
huge.
Thank you. And I thought my job here is done. And it felt like for me, honestly, that it was a changing of the guard, that it was the old guard, an 81-year-old journalist, acknowledging that the industry has changed and this fellow has stepped up, and I was 100% respectful and grateful for this. And he called me a journalist. And I'll tell you what, when Darren Hinch calls you a journalist when you talk to him, I think that's a pass mark.
Yeah. That's huge. That's huge. There's
Thank you.
Is it time for the weather?
You want a bit of laugh?
I've had this idea, Jason, that we need an alternative weather forecast. You know, the one
Yes.
that's
We're going back into the gutter.
is a bit, you know, it's a bit stuffy. So, this is unfortunately this is UK weather. It's not Australian weather, but I think we could syndicate it. Here we go.
There's a lot of swearing.
And brace your ball sacks, because this is Craven Moorhead, your renegade weather warrior, delivering the most unfiltered, batshit insane weather report for the UK, where the skies look like a chemtrail orgy gone wrong. The whole damn country's caught in a meteorological shitstorm that's got us all wondering if Mother Nature's been roofied by a shady cabal of sky-spraying bastards. It's colder than a polar bear's dick one minute, then hotter than a dragon's ball sweat the next. Why, you ask? Because the heavens are choking on a chemical cocktail of geoengineering fuckery, and we're all breathing it in like lab rats in a globalist petri dish. Let's break it down, you truth-hungry heathens. Right now, the UK's under a blanket of engineered bullshit so thick, it's like the sky's been painted by a schizophrenic chemist with a fetish for aluminum oxide. Those aren't clouds hanging over Birmingham, Bristol and beyond. Those are persistent contrails laced with barium, strontium and fuck knows what else, sprayed from high-altitude planes like some dystopian crop duster on steroids. The powers that be call it solar radiation management or climate control. But let's cut the crap. They're turning the atmosphere into a toxic piñata, and we're the ones getting whacked. This geoengineering horseshit is no conspiracy theory. It's as real as the metallic taste in your mouth after a deep breath of this aerosolized arse gravy. Down in London, it's a muggy 22 degrees Celsius, but it feels like you're wading through a sweaty armpit in a chemical sauna, thanks to the humidity and that silvery haze blocking out the sun. Up in Manchester, it's a measly 15 degrees with rain that smells like a scrapyard after a bender, probably because those sky trails are dumping heavy metals faster than a dodgy mechanic. Scotland? Jesus wept. It's like winter's squatting in the Highlands, 10 degrees with winds that'll blow your nuts clean off, and a sky that looks like it's been scribbled on by a toddler with a chemtrail crayon. Over in Wales, expect 12 degrees and a drizzle that's suspiciously slick, like the atmosphere's been lubed up with nanotech sludge. And don't even bother looking for the sun anywhere. It's cowering behind a curtain of engineered fuckery thicker than a politician's skull. This geoengineering bollocks isn't just about cooling the planet, like they claim in their fancy white papers. Nah, this is about control. Control of the weather, control of the crops, control of your goddamn lungs. They're spraying this shit on purpose, turning our summers into a schizophrenic mess where you're pulling on a parka 1 hour and stripping to your skivvies the next. Farmers are scratching their heads as their fields turn to dust or drown in freak floods. Bees are dropping like they've been huffing paint thinner. And us? We're down here coughing up our insides, wondering why our kids are sneezing sparkles and our gardens look like a post-apocalyptic film set. Wake the fuck up, people! Those crisscross patterns in the sky aren't just planes having a laugh. They're a chemical middle finger from the elite, and we're all getting flicked. For today's forecast, expect more of this bipolar bullshit across the board. In the southeast, Kent's getting a dose of patchy drizzle that's probably laced with enough nanoparticles to make your dog glow in the dark. Up north, Newcastle's stuck at 16 degrees with a fog so dense it's like the sky's chain smoking. Over in Northern Ireland, Belfast is shivering at 13 degrees under a blanket of chemically induced clouds that refuse to fuck off. And if you're planning a barbecue anywhere, good luck. You'll need a flamethrower to cut through the haze and a priest to exorcise the demons running this weather racket. This has been Craven Moorhead, your weather prophet of truth, screaming into the void while the Met Office sips tea and pretends this is all normal. Grab an umbrella, a gas mask and a megaphone, because it's time to call out this sky-shitting insanity. Check the skies, check your balls for courage, and don't let these geoengineering wankers pull the wool over your eyes. Back to you in the studio, you corporate shills, probably sipping champagne with the same bastards spraying our skies. Fuck them all. And please remember, if you watched it and you liked it, share it for others to...
What do you think, Jess?
How good is that? I remember a weather forecast back in the day. I'm holding my cricket ball right here. Was when you heard the 12th man and it came up with a typical stinking fucking hot day here in Bombay for the opening match of the series. That was it.
The 12th man. I can't believe we used to go to places. People have had that record on non-stop. There's just going back to what you said though about how you get to interview the Prime Minister. Do you know another way that it might happen is simply numbers? Because people are just leaving MSN because it's simple. They've lied and they just can't bring themselves to tell the truth. And that's all the people want. And it's not saying that we have the truth, but we call out the bullshit where we see it. And we're looking for the truth. We're trying to understand it with the bits of information that we get from above. But they're not. They're just getting caught after lie after lie. Recently, I think they were saying the hospitals are overrun, and we can get nurses and go, no, they're not. So it's just a lie right there. And that's how they're losing people. The only ones probably watching it now are the really old people who can't figure out how to switch off their big white screen TVs. I just leave it on channel 9. I don't know how to use it. But it's really interesting watching the change. It's a film called Moneyball with Brad Pitt, and I see us as the same. See, you're basically changing the game, and like what Darren's recognized it. I've had other journalists tell me the same to me, even though I don't feel like one. But basically, you're changing the game, and you're getting good numbers. About how much does each of those numbers cost you to get, and how much does the numbers cost MSN to get? Because the project in its last months was only getting 10,000 people a night, and they've got 3 hosts that they're paying, all the crew that they're paying, producers and everything. We're sometimes getting better than that. And we've got a laptop, a webcam, a microphone, and a hunger to talk.
Yeah,
that's it. So this is another way, and I think bit by bit, as the numbers come across and we get better at this is why people are watching. They're interested in watching us develop. As we get better at this, we will have an effect on a future election, and that's where it'll change. The Labours and Liberals will go, we've actually got to talk to them.
Yes.
Otherwise, we'll lose seats.
Eventually, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters, isn't it? Is absolute power. Now, a couple of points I think are worth making. I don't understand.
That's right. Oh, look at that beautiful Darren. Just Darren Glenn. Why do you think the government wants to ban kids from social media? Because they don't watch MSN now, and they're losing control of the narrative. Darren, you look about 16. Thanks, brother. That's a great comment.
It is a very good observation.
40. I'm so old now. Everyone looks 16. But that's
true.
Yeah, it's a great comment.
Great observation. Look, we have a problem that I call black pill cancer. That we want to call everything out that's gonna kill us, that's gonna hurt us. And I know Roland Crystal said it the other day at the
great guy. You watching Roland? Awesome man.
At the summit. He said, once you go down the rabbit hole, don't go down again. Don't stay there. Get out. You can't know anymore. You already know it. But you've got to take time, to paraphrase, to smell the roses. It's very important that you do. And when you are energized and you are healthy and you are vibrant, that is water off a duck's back. Now, it still may come. Well, there you go. See? Good on you, Darren. I'll have what he's having. Good on you, Darren. Unreal. But when you realize that you have to have a positive outlook and you've got to look for the real positives in it, it changes you. And what it does is it's kind of like it's attracting with honey. you're going to attract more people with a positive outlook than you are with, oh, the whole world's fucked, don't worry about it. No one wants to know that, certainly not the ones that are living in denial. And so our job is to get out of the silo, and it's to reach into the mainstream and pull more people and say, hey, have you thought about this? That is exactly what the Epstein files are doing. For the very first time, it's not the Pizzagate hunters that are talking about Epstein. It's the people that refuse to talk about Epstein for the last 10 years. Yeah. I have the same response to everyone who comes out and goes, Trump's a pedo. I go, okay, he's the only pedo that ever lived. So just explain to me this. What was Pizzagate? Where was the source? What is Frazzle Drip? What is adrenochrome? What is MK Ultra? Show me your review of The Sound of Freedom. Tell me about Laura Silsby and the 35 kids that Bill Clinton, after she got arrested with 35 Haitian children without documents, and President Bill Clinton went down and rescued her and brought her home. Tell me about the 35,000 kids that Clay Higgins talked about last week and the 800,000 kids that are still missing, according to Tom Homan. Why do you only care now that you can smell Trump blood in the water? Shame on you. But the thing is, you're talking about it. And that is exactly what the trick was. And I maintain it because I tell you what, the people that ran the Epstein operation were the same spy agencies that are now in the frame for Russiagate, the CIA, the police, the FBI, and of course it's going to go around the world. And it's going to come because if that stuff was lost or deleted or manipulated, that came from a corrupt previous organization. But there are other people that have got hold of that intel. And I will bet London to a brick that Mossad has the same intel that we can't find at the FBI. When push comes to shove, public enemy number one, Netanyahu, who happens to be the political rival and opponent of Ehud Barak, who was the head of Mossad, who was the one that used to visit Epstein in his New York mansion, when push comes to shove, Bibi Netanyahu may have to hold up and go, oh, you want the Epstein stuff? I got it right here. I've had it all along. That's what you're looking for. Meanwhile, Ghislaine Maxwell's just dropped 100 names to Todd Blanche. This thing is changing so fast, and everything is a plot twist. If you can pull off a ceasefire in Gaza, Netanyahu will be judged by his own people just as badly as anyone else for heavy-handedness, but at the same time, there's no hostages that have been returned. So what's he meant to do? If I was kidnapped, I'd want my country to fight to the very end to get me back. So I don't know where they take a side and they want balance. But how do you justify it? What is the extreme there? Now, I'm not apologizing for Israel, and I'm certainly not apologizing for terrorists.
I think Palestine's doing a better marketing job.
Well, that's the point.
We're watching genocide by Instagram. And even though Israel has the hostages, we don't see the people getting injured in Israel. We don't see what's going on in Israel. So Israel is doing a crap marketing job, to be honest. But back to something else. With us and with the movement that we have, we've been kicked out. I called it Goodbye Road, and we're the orphans of it. They kicked us out of society. You don't want to do this, Dan Andrews said very quickly, very simply. You're either with us or against us, and he kicked us out. And you're out of society. And yet here we are. We're laughing. We're talking. We're passionate. We're learning constantly. We're in our 50s, and instead of going, oh, yeah, this is how we do it, we've just done it this way for 30 years. No, we're learning constantly. You've said yourself, you're on a learning curve. You're doing 4 hours. This means we're alive. And here we are just planning and basically all working, not to make ourselves millionaires, but to try and rescue our country from a tyranny that we can see descending upon us. And that's all across Australia, people are doing this. Every podcaster, every person that's doing common law, learning common law, the Constitution. We don't know which of the paths is going to reach the top of the Liberty Mountain first, but they're all doing things and infighting, and we're all making mistakes. And it looks like sometimes we don't know what we're doing, but we're not quitting. And the one thing I've noticed whenever I've interviewed, no matter who I interview, no matter if they go, I lost my house, I lost my dreams, lost my this and this and this. I go, do you regret the choices you made? They go, no. No one's regretted it. Everyone is still basically we're worn out and we're a bit disillusioned, but we're still going forward. And even here tonight, what we're actually doing is not so much waking people up, we're entertaining the troops. We're breathing a breath of positive into their morale to say, you know, come on, you're a part of this great turning, maybe globally, not just in Australia, maybe around the world. People are going, no, these guys are right. And bit by bit, someone comes in and joins our communities online. That's why I like doing it live. You know, we've got these lovely people. Someone new joins, they start talking to them. Welcome to the community. It's almost like a prodigal child. Welcome to the community. There's something happening here, like the song said. No one knows exactly what it is, and here we progress. And even like the free summit that we just had, we've had someone was there, some troll filming us, and they've been on other podcasts doing it. I haven't even watched it. I think, oh, screw it, because nothing is going to stop us. You can't stop us. You've thrown it. You've shot us. You've had scandals against us. You put us down. The trolls have tried 5 years of intense hate, and we're still here. We're not full of hate. We're smiling. We keep going, and we keep dreaming, really, of ways to go forward. And like here you are now. You know, let's see how we go with Cafe Lockdown. You're more than welcome, but there's an excitement in the air that you guys should actually quit. What does it take for you guys to stop? Well, we're not stopping because we believe we're on the right path. And here's my lead. Look, fine. I'm not giving up. What I realized as I was doing the interviews around Australia, and including this one, I'm capturing giants. There's a history here, and the history is split into two. Those who are too scared to do anything, and giants who are actually risking everything to try to give their children and their grandchildren something that they were born with, the freedom we were born with. They're trying to leave a better country for that. And yeah, I think it's an extraordinary time to be alive. And even the fatigue is really a blessing, because from that fatigue, ideas come along. You know, you think, oh, well, let's try that. And then a new energy, and then you're off again. And we've had 5 years of complete failure, apart from William Bay winning his court case. And that 5 years of failure hasn't stopped us. It's just emboldened us. We just get up and we learn, which means at some point that thing's going to turn around, and we will be the Renaissance, because we're selling something that humans want. We want a future that's conducive to the human soul. And the globalists are selling us a prison. That's what it comes down to. Yeah.
Now, I'll just make a comment there that all growth comes from adversity. You don't grow in a comfort zone.
Thank you.
And so 5 years of hard yards, and you realize that you keep getting, it gets harder. Now, I know that what we've watched now, and when I say it gets harder, because we don't know when the end is coming, but we are better than we were 5 years ago. Now, I know that just watching the comments come through and they're flying through, that when you talk positive, a lot of positive comes out in those comments over the last few minutes there. A lot of positives. Look at that. Never surrender. I saw one from Bronwyn. I saw one earlier. Some really, really good stuff. There you go. It keeps coming. Now, here's another thing I want to make, another very important point. Within our community, we're not all the same. We're not meant to be all the same. We're not a hive mind. We're all about free will. But there is a political divide within us, and I'll explain it briefly. There are the idealists, and most of the people watching here are idealists because you have your principles, truth is on your side, and you don't want to compromise when you know you've caught bad people out. However, we are not in a world that you can be an idealist, because in politics you can only get 10% on and through idealism. That's all you'll ever get. That's just how it is. Politics is 51-49, and it's a blood sport. But 51 beats 49 every single time. So how do we bring that together? So therefore, you get introduced now to another component of our movement, which are the pragmatists. Now, that's something that I'm in. I'm a pragmatist. Lefties generally are pragmatists, do whatever it takes. Machiavellians, that's where that idea comes from. On the far extreme at the other end, in left-right politics, they're called the born to rule. People like Alex Hawke in the Liberal Party, they just believe that they were born to rule. The way that he kicked Novak Djokovic out for the tennis based on the fact that he thought someone might get vaccine hesitant. Meanwhile, they got a hammer standing over every single Australia, but Novak comes in to win the tennis, sitting at the other end of a court, can't give anyone COVID, but we won't bring him in because he might create vaccine hesitancy. Well, mate, Alex, we already decided we're not taking it, so get stuffed. Like, can you believe it? That's a born to ruler. So in our movement, we have idealists, we have pragmatists, and we also have extremists. Now, an extremist, if you want to identify, might be someone who is anti-WEF, anti-WHO, anti-UN, anti-climate change, anti-vax. Now, that's great to be all of that stuff. The problem is it doesn't get any support to get votes to win people into Parliament. And what I'm going to say is, I'll just say one name, Ricardo Bossi. Can't get 1.5% every time he runs. Can't get it. That's the extremist. So what I'm trying to say is our approach politically is different to our approach when we talk, when we do town halls. And that's why I'm saying that if you had a respect movement, which technically would become a union of all of us together under a banner, what do we want? We want free speech. We want to be respected. We want to know that we have bodily autonomy. We want to know that we have opportunity for ourselves and for others, and we also want to know that no one's going to take our shit off us for any purposes to give to anyone else. That's a pretty basic place to start. And when you do that, you realize that we can fight for that and we can build from it. And then we want to protect and we want to rediscover our identity. We want to protect it, and we want to know that this constitution means something again. And if we're going to have to play Australia Act and we're going to have to play this corporate constitution that everyone gets confused about, and Rennick got a very good argument that will get a lot of people sorted because most people are confused by it. And then we come out and we go, well, maybe we could look at the whole idea of a new head of state that we vote for, and that would change things without having to change the government. Because you imagine if Julian Assange was president and he goes, Albo, you're out. Let's call an election. Like, holy shit, that's all we needed to do. We just needed a president instead of the governor general. Like, that's a different approach, right? It completely short circuits the entire thing if you get the right person in there. That's the power of Trump. I'll make this quick observation. Epstein, Russiagate, and Tulsi Gabbard's on both of them. And the next one she came out with this weekend, she said, the way we're going to approach COVID, this is for COVID justice, everyone. This is huge. The way they're going to do it is through the, what do you call it? The gain of function. That's how they're going to get Fauci. That's how they're going to get China. That's how they're going to get the deep state. It's the same people. It's through gain of function. They've got now the legal argument to prove, and she said it all along. All the stuff. That's why Tulsi Gabbard is the head of the DNI, because they did it to her. She was by far the best candidate in the Democrats. She wiped the floor with Kamala Harris. She should be a Democratic presidential nominee. She may well be the very next president of the United States as a Republican. I reckon that's my hot, rough outside chance to jump. I reckon J.D. Vance could do another 4 years as a vice president. But I tell you what, if she brings them down and COVID, and then you got Bobby Kennedy waiting in the wings to do what he's got to do, which is why he's there, we have got our best last chance to get out of this thing alive. And if you take them out on gain of function, the WHO, there won't be a WHO. They will go down with that sinking ship, guys. That's the big call. That's the point. We don't need to worry about the WHO if Tulsi Gabbard takes them out for gain of function. That's the point. So what I'm trying to say is we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
Don't be afraid of the negatives. Use that negative energy to put it into something positive, to invest in yourself. Even if it's as simple as buying a bar of bloody silver that you didn't own last week. Save up $2,000 and go buy a kilo of it and put it away, because in 5 years' time it'll be worth a lot more than $2,000. Now that's not financial advice, it's the reality. Just one good thing for yourself, and you will change your life on something as simple as that. And then it opens up another door. And my mate Craig Schultz will say, have a side hustle. Work out a way to nickel and dime yourself $200 extra a week and do something with it. $200 a week's $10,000. $10,000 at the end of it takes you to Vietnam on a holiday with your family. You couldn't have done that 5 years ago. Just little things to think differently, but it changes everything. And you know what? Success breeds success. We've had enough defeat. Let's make little successes turn into big successes. And when you do that, you'll be surprised. And because then when you turn up at the respect rallies, at the town halls, you have got something to sell, because you know that it works, and we will believe each other, and it will be like bees, honey. They're coming to us. They will come to us because they want
I agree.
success. That's
I think they'll be very interested from it, because I interviewed that paramedic the other day, and what he said to me was beautiful. In the interview, he said, Nobody who sat in front of Netflix for 3 weeks, eating popcorn, watching films, said that's a life-affirming experience, and I've grown from this experience.
Yeah.
And I thought that's the truth. The reason we're thankful to COVID is it's allowed us to discover how strong we can be.
Yes.
And so when things happen now, like my bus caught fire the other day, I didn't tell anyone. But in the past, that would have been like, oh my God. We're now, where's the fire extinguisher? Put it out, get it fixed, let's move on. And I'm getting stronger than I've ever been. I don't usually talk about myself this way, but I am. I like this Michael because he's tough. He doesn't stop. I've just had a heart attack. I'm back at work and I'm loving it. I don't even feel like I'm working. I feel blessed to be doing what I'm doing. And I'm doing just a tiny little small part of this in a field of giants who are all pushing their way forward. And you should join us because we need your energy. We need your ideas. We need your passion. And we need your love for the country. You can't love the country they're offering you. You can't be scared of hardship. Hardship is what will strip the barnacles off your body and get you to where you need to be. And there's a great future for us and for our kids. And imagine, I think the most joyous thing I could ever think of is, say, our great-grandkids growing up in a country that's abundant. They've got possibilities, endless possibilities. They're really enjoying it. And they have no idea that their abundance comes from our hard work. They never know it, but that's what it is. It was this generation that finally said, okay, time to roll up the sleeves and fix this country. And we did it. And that's the legacy we left. That is a worthy life for all of us. I really believe that. Yeah,
Absolutely. That's the whole point, isn't it? And the positive attitude, the highest hope, and realizing that we were, wealth for toil, for goodness sake, it's in our national anthem. I mean,
now, I'm going to give him the second last word, then you the last word, and then I'm going to call it quits. Brilliant show, Jason.
Thank you very
I'm just
much.
sitting here grinning that how lucky we was to meet you, and even this has been blessed, man. It's been fantastic having you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Second last word.
looking forward to seeing your news. I think I'm going to have to subscribe to your Substack. Where's your Substack?
If you remove the comments, it'll pop up on the screen, and it just says jasonqcitizen.substack.com.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's been great to meet you, Jason. And you interviewed all these great doctors on TNT, and you still haven't got to me. So it's great to catch up.
Paul, Dr. Easthouse was the first doctor in Australia to be suspended for talking about COVID, and the first to win it back in the Supreme Court because he proved that they had acted unlawfully. And so they dropped the case, like, oh, it's okay, just go back to it.
Apparently my means were incompatible with being a practitioner in Australia.
It's just unbelievable, isn't it? Well, I'll make this point that we did try to reach out at the time, and for whatever reason, maybe you were working with Michael or something like that, and there was a reason we couldn't connect. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to do it in the future. Just like with Miley, I am desperate to speak to that beautiful, wonderful, amazing doctor. Another one I wasn't able to get. Exactly. So, Miley, if you're still watching, you are on the very, very short list. But I just want to say this, that the other way you're going to be able to find me, my show's called The 51st State, but that's just one. I have now set up the URL channel51.com.au. So if you go to that tonight, you'll go through to another website that's set up with my content. I'll be expanding that so that I will I'll be doing now. This is my plans. I'm going to tell you all here now because there's so many people watching. If you're interested, Monday to Friday, I will continue on the old work that I was doing at the Daily Australian. That era is now over. I'm going to provide a compressed 30-minute bulletin Monday to Friday. I hope to get that out during the day live. If it's okay with you guys, I'd like to share it on your platform for a 6:30 news slot. I think it would be invaluable to bring people up to date with what's happening in Australia and around the world. and then twice a week, that will also then play out on American. I've already got that onto American radio, WRMI, coming out of Florida. They're going to play it as well, which will be their 7 p.m. news, which I'm delighted. That's a big deal. And I will be producing. It is huge, and I'm going to do 2 1-hour interviews a week on my 51st State show, but I have a feeling one of them is going to evolve, because 51st State has got a real theme to it. I want to call the other one either 51 minutes or 51:49 because it's politics. But Paul, if you're up for it, I would love to get you onto that format, because we have unfinished business, and I haven't yet had on my 51 shows, I have had deliberately avoided all doctors because I wanted to start something new. We're now, I think, episode 19 or 20. We do it once a week. So this would be a big deal, because we're chronicling what happened, as Michael does. Michael's probably Australia's best chronicler, and he'll say, oh, no, I'm not, but he is. But that's the point, because we've got a lot of history to get down in what we're doing. So that's where I'm going. But the point is, to the audience that are watching and that are here so far, this is all about you. We serve you at what we're doing. It's a service to community. Don't feel bad if we say that we have to professionalize. That's because we are competing with the professionals. And we're going to do the best that we can. And the other thing is, you guys are the engine room. I've been watching comments that I think it was Anthony's been putting up throughout the show, incredibly well researched. Like, I don't get access to that information. You are the citizen journalist army, the digital journalist army, providing this information. Now, we can't put it all out there, and we've got to package this stuff to make it work. But the point is that we're providing verified, factual information that is real news. And the more people that watch it, the more minds realize that they have been hoodwinked, and that there is a much better world out there. And I'll tell you what, I cannot accept a government that has a downward trajectory telling us that we need to keep voting them in because it's getting worse, and they're the ones we need to keep in to keep it from going worse, as if they weren't there, it would get worse or faster. It's a nonsense. It's a scam. And therein lies the point.
It's insane. It's just, it's crazy you even saying it, but that's where we are. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. And so there he is. There's Anthony on the screen. Well done, Anthony. Look, thrilled to be able to read that in real time. And my shows will also be the news show that I do during the day on my jasonqcitizen.substack, provided I can make it work. Otherwise, it'll be on my Twitter page and my Facebook and YouTube, etc. It will also be live. It's the only way to do it. So thank you so much for having me on the show. It's been great to make new friends as we build and repair our country. It's what we're born for. What a time to be alive.
I think someone put it best. Paul Lassig, if it's Paul watching, he said, we don't need a revolution. We need what Australians are excellent at. We need a renovation. We need to start renovating our country.
Paul's a good guy, yeah.
Take care, man. It's been fantastic to have you on. I look forward to working with you very much. And this is, we're going to go out with a song from a doctor in New Zealand who writes songs in his spare time. This is called Someone Else's Dream. And
this one stuck in my head after I heard it after the interview. So, yeah, enjoy.
Take care, Jason. And good night, everybody. Thanks for staying with us for these 2 hours. And there we go.
There is nobody there, nobody left to care. Gone with a penny arcade, where we spent our childhood days. When I take a look around, all I see are heads bowed down, with eyes affixed on Samsung's screen, watching someone else's dream. Well, the bus conductor's gone. Just swipe your card and head for home. That old treehouse where we played sits forgotten and decayed. When I take a look around, all I see are heads bowed down, with eyes affixed on Samsung's screen, watching someone else's dream. So no more the penny arcade, KFC is there instead, and that tree we used to climb is sad and lonely most of the time. When I take a look around, all I see are heads bowed down, with eyes affixed on Samsung's screen, watching someone else's dream. And when I look around, all I see are heads bowed down, with eyes affixed on Samsung's screen, watching someone else's dream, watching someone else's dream.